Greetings! Last time I saw you, we worked on polymer clay texture beads, and I showed you how to work with some of my Rubber Nature texture mats and conditioned polymer clay and toothpicks, and we created some great beads, and I've got some here, and these are beads that have been baked, and we'll be working with them today. The only color technique I showed you last time was incorporating glitter in your clay before it was baked. Today I'm going to show you a lot more fun color techniques. If you've seen my videos, you know I'm all about putting my tools and supplies on trays. Today I got a brilliant idea. I put everything on this Lazy Susan. I've got everything here that I'm going to need for doing the color work on the beads. I've got a few other things on my table. I've got this, which is actually just a styrofoam piece, and I'm sticking toothpicks in it. I could put a longer skewer in here if I wanted to, and I use it for drying my beads after I've painted them. So I'll have this on my table too. I have got another little ceramic pot that I've got some scissors in and paint brushes and a few things like that. So I've got everything nearby. If I want to use some gloss for my beads, I've got that nearby as well. But I won't show you everything. I'll just tell you about it as we're working. I took a few things off of my other trays and put them on this tiny tray. I'm going to be using this now as we work. In the last video, I promised to show you how to create one of these beads, and we're going to do that right away. Before I make that one though, I'm going to make one that doesn't have color in it, and then I'll show you two ways to work with these beads. So this will be a lot of fun. So all I need to do is take a little bit of my conditioned clay. I've got some right here. That feels real good, nice and warm. Okay, I'm going to need a little toothpick. So I'm going to insert that in the middle for my bead hole. I've got that ready. And then I'm going to use this design, this rubber stamp design. And I've got two of the same design. And I am just simply going to put my clay here, squish it down a little bit, line the next piece up. There are flowers up here. So I am going to find the flowers here. Really easy with a square stamp because I can match all corners. And I'm just pressing this out. And you can work whatever size you want. Depends what size ball you roll out. So here I've got a nice image. Okay, like the one I've got here. This one has been baked already. This one will be ready to be baked. And so I showed you this little thing that I have. And I can just stick this in here and get it ready for baking. Okay. So I'll put that aside. Now I'm going to ink this image up. And I don't have to ink the entire stamp. I'm only going to be using the center. So that's what I'm going to ink. And I want to ink both sides up. And I am using an ink that's a permanent ink. Okay, I need another little ball of clay here. Roll this one out and get myself another toothpick. Put it in the middle here. And I'm going to repeat this process. I'm just going to set it down, give it a little press, come back just like I did before, line everything up. Difference being I've got ink on here. I could work with any color ink I wanted to work with, but I think the black and white is going to be very easy for you to see. So here we are. And I've got another great bead. These are so very pretty. I'm going to set this aside and pop this one over. And here's a tip. I just worked with this. I'm not going to work with it again. I don't want to take a lot of time to clean it. I keep a little tray of water on my table, and I'm just throwing that in, and I'll clean up, wash it up a little bit later. I did want to show you a couple of things here. So these are the beads. This is like the one we just made, and these have been baked. You bake them as they are, and the nice thing about it is you don't have to do any kind of a seal coat on them if you don't want to. But if you'd like to, you can. So hopefully you can see this. I did a little seal coat on this one. I actually used a Minwax polyacrylic spray. I like that very much. And it's giving a glossy finish. So hopefully you can see the difference there. So if you feel like you want extra protection on your beads, that would be a good way to go. I'm going to just set these aside now. And I did want to show you this. I thought this really was a pretty bead. And it's one of these that I have already baked, and then I'm going to work on it. And the way I did this was I actually used a couple of my Sharpie pens. So you could work with Sharpies, and all I did was come in and added a little color here. Okay, and this is permanent ink, and it works really well on your polymer clay. So I put that in, and let me grab it, still another color here. I'll just do a little bit of accenting. Okay. And you could take as much time as you wanted to take. I'm just doing a very quick job to give you an idea. But doing this work really will yield some very unique and beautiful beads. So once I have this, I have got another type of ink, and it's permanent as well. And all I'm going to do, and I usually like to put this on a toothpick, it's a little easier for me to handle. And all I'm going to do is just blot over this area. And you see it's changing some of the colorways, making it very interesting. I could come back onto this piece if I wanted to and introduce more color in different ways, but I think it's very, very pretty. I did the other side of this one just as a one color, but I love it with more than one color, and this is going to be very pretty as well. Now I could just let this dry, or I could bake it again. Yes, you can bake polymer clay a second time. And if you wanted to put a different finish on this piece, you could certainly do that. I did want to come back and touch on this technique again and show you this technique. You might be looking at both of these and thinking, well, that's the same technique. But no, it's totally different. This is actually created the way we pressed, we inked our stamp and then we pressed our clay into it. This is done a different way. We have created our image, pressed our clay into the rubber, gotten the design, we've baked this piece, and once it's been baked, I've got a couple here, once they've been baked, now we will take one of the ink pads, and it's very handy if you have this tool, but if you don't, you could use the ink pad itself, or you could use a little sponge. But if you take this now, and I think I'll work on this smaller piece, and you just press over, and I'll show you in a minute what the difference is. Okay, so now I've pressed over. what I hope you can see is that part of the clay that is inward is white. The raised clay is black. It's just the opposite here. The raised clay is white and the inward clay is black. So that's a second technique. Have a great time doing it in all different kinds of colorways. It's just a lot of fun. And before we leave this group, I'm just going to come back and show you one more piece, and it is again this design that we were working with, and I just pressed it out, didn't put any ink on it, and then I came back in and painted everything using the Lumiere paints. I just love them. They have such a beautiful glisten to them, and they're so pretty. And then I started fancying this piece up. Actually, it'd be pretty nice with my bracelet, wouldn't it? So that's a fun piece. So I wanted to touch on those. Now we'll move on to a couple of other ideas. And I'll just quickly show you. These are a couple of beads that were baked, and all I did was painted them. Now I could do this two different ways. I could create the bead and then paint it and then bake it, or I could bake it and then paint it. So either way, for doing something like that, I wanted to show you. And a lot of times people like working with mica powders, and I've got some here, and they are fun to work with. I usually just tap the jar down a little bit, and yeah, these toothpicks do come in very handy. So I'll just take one and put a little bit of the mica in the lid here, and I use it very, very sparingly. A little bit on my fingertip, and I'm just going to take it. And again, I like working with a toothpick here. It's easier for me to hold the piece, and I'm just lightly rubbing over. You see how pretty that is? It's always beautiful when you use the mica powders, and they come in so many beautiful colors. They're fun to use. But the thing that I want you to know about using mica powders is, well, two things. Use it sparingly, and if you're going to use mica powders and you're making jewelry pieces, you are going to want to do a coating on these pieces. You can do this on clay before it's been baked, because you can bake the mica very easily. I could take this piece now that it's been baked already once, and I bake it again. That would be fine. But it would not change it from rubbing off at some point. So I've got a piece that I've done here, and this is a very pretty little piece. And let me throw that on a little stick too, so you can see it a little easier. Perhaps, let me bring something over. We'll set it against there. Maybe it'll be prettier, easier to see. And this one I have actually coated with my Minwax, and I feel real good about the coating that's on this piece. So it's very nice. This technique is a lot of fun. I just took some Lumiere paint and painted my bead. Now I could paint it before baking it or after baking it. Works either way. These are just gorgeous paints, and so I think it's really fun on this. And all I'm going to do now is use an emery board. And of course I want to make sure my paint is dry before I do this. And do you see what I'm doing here? I am removing this top layer of paint off of some of the textured areas and revealing the color of polymer clay I worked with. I think it's really, really, really fun. let me set this one aside for a quick minute and bring one over that I did earlier. And I just washed this one with a blue acrylic paint, let that dry, and baked my piece, and then came back in and revealed the white again. And I think you get some really fun and unique beads doing that. Here's one that I'll bring over and I'll do a little bit on it for you so you can see this one happening. Are you surprised? I've got a really fun red clay that I worked with under here, and I'm getting a really interesting bead. Beautiful texture design. The thing about the beads that I make is I love making unique beads. I like using them. I use them in all different ways. It's just fun for me. You can obviously make an entire set of the same bead if you wanted to and do your whole necklace with these. But I just like doing different beads, and I think I found a way to do that. Using the acrylic, you don't have to seal coat, but if you want to seal coat this, you can go right ahead. I've got one that I actually did a little seal coating on, and I'm going to go on my Lazy Susan tray and bring a product over. This is something that I found that I really like using. It's called Delta Ceramic Coat, and it's a protective sealer finish. It's a sparkle glaze, and I use this after I've baked the piece. I don't bake with this on, but anyway, I just did the other side with that. So I did my work, and then I gave this the protective coating of that sparkle coat. Can you see how pretty that is? I think it's really a fun thing to use. Oh, I love making these. They're so much fun. Here's one that I did with a beautiful copper finish, and then the clay underneath was a charcoal. This would also be pretty if I did put a finish coat on it. Maybe just something clear if I wanted to jazz that one up a little bit. I think I'll just bring one more over because it's so much fun doing these. And this is a nice long bead. And I have been working with my little emery board. You could work with a piece of sandpaper as well. Whatever works better for you. And for me, I think it's going to be the emery board. Now we're not getting a whole lot of contrast in this piece. Getting some contrast. I'm not sure the camera's going to pick this up for you. I am working on a deep pink here with the copper. The colors do seem fairly close together here, so I don't think I'll do more with this one. I've got so many fun color techniques that I really had to think about what I wanted to show you next. And I thought, I think I'll show them how to work with eyeshadow to do some color work. So what I usually do when I'm working with eyeshadow is I'll just take my clay and press it right down into the eyeshadow pad. Get some different colors into it. And then I'll just work with this. Get it coming around a little bit. What I'm looking to do is look for something that looks a little bit marbled. I'll try this one. And I've got an image out here. I'm going to just take a toothpick, run it through, and I'm going to give that a little press down, find the flower, and give it another little press down. Oh yeah. So you get some very unusual colorways when you work with eyeshadow. And of course, eyeshadow comes in all kinds of different colors. I think this is going to be a very pretty bead. And this is one that I might decide, oh, I'll fritz it up a little bit. Remember I showed you how to do this in the last video, and I'm just going to take in and change the personality on this bead a little bit. It's going to be very pretty. And then I'm going to put it over on my little styrofoam rack for baking. And I'll show you a couple of other things that I did using this eyeshadow. So let me set this one aside. And here's one that I did earlier. And I did it with that little edge to it too. You can see how interesting it is. It's just a very different looking bead. Yeah, my hands are a little eyeshadowed up right now. Let's see. Here's one that I did. And this one I put a little coating on. And sometimes I use that Pledge floor wax. They have the Super Shine, 2x Super Shine. And I used that and just painted some of that over. And it gives it a really nice, interesting look. I'll lay out a couple more of these beads because I think they're kind of fun to look at. I've got a board that I can just put them out on. Some right out on here. The look is very different with these, I think. This is very subtle. And on this one, what I did is I took one of those little foam applicators. Sometimes I have them out on my table. Let's see if I've got one handy. Yes, I do. And I just rubbed it into the eyeshadow and then came across this bead before baking. And that's what I did with these. And they're very pretty. But I also did some others with this technique. And I want to bring those over too, because they've got a really nice look. And yes, I did actually make some that were uniform size, so I could do something else with them. So I've got some of these, and just, I think they're very pretty. Very, very different, very soft look. This one I did a little inclusion on, and I used the foam applicator to add my color here, and then I did the little gem inclusion. And on my tray I usually keep, let's see, where it is it? I usually keep a little tacky glue, and I put a little bit of that down before I baked it. And actually I baked it with the little stone in because it's glass, and you can bake that. You can bake your metal right in the pieces as well. So that, I thought this was pretty. And this is a little subtle color, but there's a little lavender in here and a little green. And so I can come back into my bead. You saw how I mixed it, but I could also come back and grab a little color right off of the eyeshadow and just rub it on. But then I need to do that before I bake it. And so I'll get that nice color in. And some of these little ones, I'm not sure you can see, but they've got a couple of different color tones in them. That's how I did those. Notice anything new? Yes. Couple fun techniques, but they can get a little messy. So I decided I would get the gloves out. Put the gloves on. So one of the techniques is just very simply to take your baked clay bead and press it down onto the ink pad. You can get some really nice results doing that. You don't have to go back and bake this again. I want to get a little color on the edge. It doesn't have to be uniform because my design isn't uniform. So this is really pretty. It's really a fun piece. I might do a little more with this in a few minutes, so I'm just going to set it here, and I'm going to show you another fun bead. And I'm just going to take one of these elongated beads and just do a little simple roll on the ink pad. Now you see what's happening. It's very uneven. Put a little on the top there. And then my way of getting the other side is to put a toothpick in that end, and I can come up and dip this end. So it makes it really easy. Okay, so it looks a little sporadic, but when I get back and show you what I can do with it, I think you're going to love it. So I have those. I'm going to set this ink pad aside. Just put that aside for right now. And over here I have gotten a little of this Liquitex. They make a really nice acrylic as well, lots of colors. So I've got some of that, and now I want to get a little bit of clay. Okay, I've got a little ball of clay here, and I am just going to use a little toothpick and put a little of this acrylic onto my clay. Get that in, and then just fold it in. This is why you need the gloves, otherwise it's just totally on your hands. And I'm getting a nice marbled look. Well, we got a marbled look when we used the eyeshadow, but we weren't getting the intensity of color like we're getting here. So this is really, really fun. I'm going to take and get a couple more images here. And well, I could use the same toothpick. Just take my toothpick and come through with it. Pick out a spot that I want to use. I kind of like that. And I'm going to press. I could do a roll bead. I could do all sorts of different looks. Ooh, okay. So I've got a kind of an interesting bead here, and the colors, again, a little sporadic on this, but it's a very pretty color. I'm going to put these aside, and I'm going to show you a couple of things that I did with those colors. So I created a bunch of little beads, and this one I just baked like this, just baked it, and let it go at that. And I actually made a necklace that I'll show you. You may have noticed that I used some of the sparkle glaze on my necklace, and you may have noticed that I like asymmetric. So my beads are all different sizes. That's just how I like to work and what I like to wear. I've got another one of these beads, and I actually just put a little bit of the Minwax on it, and it's just given it a nice little sheen. So those are very pretty, and that's a way of working with this type of bead. If I wanted to reduce the amount of color that I put here, obviously I would have put a little less into my ball or made a bigger ball and divided it up a little bit differently. The other thing that I might be able to do would be able to take just a piece of paper toweling, dip it in a little water, and remove a little bit of this color. But I also found something else that I like doing with it, and I actually created, I think, a gorgeous bead. This one. And what I did, let me put it on a little board. I think it's easier to see. What I did with this one was baked it all. Then I came back and I used some of the acrylic that was a gold metallic bronzy finish, and I took one of my fine little paint brushes, got one here, I'll show you, and just painted in these various places. Gave it a little bit of that color, and then once that was dried, I took and I did a finish coat on this, and I actually used that Minwax polyacrylic spray. Actually, I gave it more than one coat. I gave it 2 coats. When I created this bead, I used 2 different designs, so the other side is a little different, and I think it's gorgeous as well. So it's a toss-up, which side do you like better? It'd be a fun pendant. I could wear it a couple of different ways. So I love that. Then I want to go back and I want to talk about these beads that we created. And so these I am going to do a little wash with once they've been baked. So I will bake these 2, and once they're baked, I'll come back and I will take some of my metallic gold acrylic and I'll come back with it here. And this is one that I did. And actually I did it in the same colorway here and just washed everything over with this gold. I actually did a second baking on it because I wanted to bake that acrylic into the piece, and I think what a difference and how pretty that is. So it's just a really nice technique, same technique that you could use on this piece as well. I've had a lot of fun today showing you, and now I'm going to let you take a look at some of my other beads.